So, thanks for joining us, Brother Ellsworth.
Yeah, happy to.
So, here's the two ways we can go about doing this. You could either, if you would prefer to do a screen share, you can show me and do it as I want to, or I'll go ahead and do my screen share and then you talk me through it and I'll drive.
So I can do it from here. I'll share my screen. For indexing, yeah?
Yeah, let's do some indexing.
Okay. So let's, I was just checking to make sure that I had it pulled up, and it looks like it has timed out a little bit. So we'll log in. We'll go from square one. Okay, do you all see that?
Yep, looking good.
All right, we're going back to sign in. So there's a couple things to note. Let's start from this page here where it's the FamilySearch homepage or dashboard. So this is after you sign in, right? So once you sign in, I've got my name up here. It means I've signed in. You go to this indexing tab and you go to web indexing. That's sort of going to bring up what I like to call the dashboard, or your kind of the introduction, the gateway to the indexing projects.
Awesome. Now, hey, real quick, Mark. I have been signed in to FamilySearch for many, many years, and I don't even quite remember how I did it the first time. So if anyone's just getting started with this who watches this video, to get started on FamilySearch, the website is familysearch.org. Is that correct?
Right. Yep.
And your login should be your LDS account information. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. And if you haven't logged into FamilySearch before, you can set that up by connecting it to your what used to be the LDS.org login, but now it's the churchofjesuschrist.org, right? Login information. So, and if you haven't set that up, it's your it's set up by way of your membership number, and that can be found through clerks and clerkish people.
Clerkish types. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem. So as we're here on your kind of web indexing portal, the dashboard kind of thing, there's a couple things that I want to point out here. You've got your indexing totals here. So this kind of gives you a sense of where you're at. And one thing to note about that is once you hit 1,000 indexing, you automatically are allowed to review. So that I haven't quite hit that mark yet. Once I hit that mark, I'll be able to start reviewing, and the numbers will start accruing there. And these are lifetime numbers. So those right there. So that's here are my batches.
That's your scoreboard right there?
Yeah, that's your scoreboard. And you can kind of, there's another way to keep track of running goals and running totals, and we'll look at that in just a moment. But here's where this is kind of where the magic starts, your batches. You can see here that I've got 4 batches that I've begun, and you start the whole process, because you won't have those if you start from scratch, or you start all fresh and new. You go to find batches, and we'll look at that in just a minute, but let me point out a couple things here. So this is your progress, and you can track this for current or previous, and you can look at quarter, year, all time. This is where you kind of set your goals and your targets. If you look at this number here, I can click on that and I can change the target, and it'll adjust the gray line here that tells you how many you should be doing regularly to meet your targeted goals.
That's cool.
And then it tracks, the green is how many names you've submitted. So I have not done anything for a week. The invitation from our state presidency is to do a batch per week. So I started a batch and I haven't finished yet because I'm using it as an example for this demonstration. And then down here are some groups that that you can be connected to. You're automatically enrolled in your ward and your stake, and then you can actually set up new groups here. I've actually set up a group here that's my family, the good old Knights of Eel, coming from the etymology of Ellsworth, or at least one alleged etymology of Ellsworth, the eel farmers in Cambridgeshire, England.
Hey,
So
you gotta eat.
that's your basically your dashboard. What was that?
You gotta eat.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Everybody loves that river slug, right?
Oh wow.
So if
British
we go into,
cuisine.
yeah, yeah, it takes all kinds. Um, so if we go into find batches again, there's a couple things to note in here. This is how you set up your first, or not necessarily your first, but each time you need to batch or do a batch, you find a new batch. These are running projects that are going right now in this part of the window. And I can see here there's an indexing and there's a reviewing kind of number. So what's pertinent to us right now is the indexing. And once you get reviewing, there'll be a review box right about here. But as you can see with Louisiana death certificates, the indexed, there are 22% of those indexed. So the project is ongoing. And there's three, let's see, I think there's three levels of what you're going to be doing. There's an index name, there's a batch, and then there's a project. The project is what we're looking at here. Inside the project, there's a whole bunch of batches. Inside the batches, there's anywhere from 2 to 3 to 50 to 60 names, okay? And so that's kind of how the projects are broken down in different tier levels, different.
So to back this up a little bit, just to cover the history of what is indexing, as I'm becoming familiar with it. So we have all these records that were accumulated from census records to marriage records, death records, newspaper prints, all these records that have been digitally scanned, but are not they've not been converted into a searchable format yet. And so what
Yes.
we're doing as indexers is we're going through as humans reading a document image and saying,
Yes.
this is what it says in computer terms so that it can be
Yes.
utilized by a database for searching for temple work and other genealogical work.
That is a very important thing to note, by the way. So thanks for bringing that up. Anecdotally, just kind of a little bit more on those kind of specifications. The church has camera teams going throughout the world, accessing records and photographing and archiving them in a digital format, to the tune of over 1 million records a day, almost 2 million records a day. So there are a lot of images, a lot of information being recorded digitally. The job of the indexer is to take those visual images and create data files, things that can be searchable by an individual. So one thing to note about the job of the indexer is that we are not the interpreters. We are meant to enter the data exactly as we see it. And there are points in indexing where you might know a name is spelled incorrectly or likely spelled incorrectly. That's not our job to correct it. Our job is to write it exactly as it is so that someone can search it.
Right.
The
Within the searching algorithms, there's a thing called SoundX. There are other kinds of smart search tools that allow the computer to modify even things that are similarly spelled or start the same letter. So there's a lot of room for filling in the blanks when it comes to the searching side of things. But yeah, we just want to make sure we're recording exactly what's written, or at least to the best of our ability to decipher the hand scratchings that we find.
Yeah. And this used to be called extraction, and that sounds horrible. So we call it indexing now. And
extraction sounds like tooth removal.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that indexing is essential to temple work. Without indexing, people can't search for their family names. Without searching for their family names, they can't take their names to the temple and do work for the dead. And in many ways, looking at the current situation as it is today, indexing provides us a way to actually do temple work without being able to go to the temple. It's an extension of temple work that goes into the home, and makes it so that we can continue the work while temples are variously shut down and suspended in terms of the proxy
And I think that's a
ordinances.
great point. You know, with everything shut down like this, I mean, since I've been out of work for 6 months now, I was able to go to the temple weekly, and that's
Right,
silver linings, right? Um,
right.
that being taken away now, I've resorted to playing way too many video games. I jokingly said that your score up at the top. You know, if that's what it takes, just to ease the transition of you take one addiction and make it something useful.
Yeah, you go.
Or seriously, treat it like a score.
Well, and we'll look at when you finish. There's some gamification that they've done to indexing that actually makes it kind of fun too, and that's in a similar way.
You get
So
a little
we'll
confetti and
look
a
at
cheer.
what was that?
You get a little confetti and a cheer.
Yeah, and we'll go through that once we'll complete a batch today too, so that we can experience that all together. So once you get in here, there's I can search for a batch, but as you can see right now, there's three really active projects in the beginning level English. So if I go over here, I can start using this star functionality and favorite some of these that I like, and they'll show up at the top of the list. Sometimes there's anywhere between I've seen 3 or up to 20 projects active and live at any given time. And here you can kind of increase the difficulty level. You can add intermediate and advanced. Little word of warning: once you get up into intermediate and advanced, it you become quite an archaeologist trying to decipher hand handwritten records and things, and it can be quite fun. I would say don't shy away from it. In fact, dig in. There's no shame in returning a batch or not completing a batch. So if we go back, we'll do this real quick. So you can also see that you can select pretty much uh, whatever language your heart desires. Um, as as far as indexing goes, 95% of the indexed records are in English. There is a huge need for other languages. So if you even have an interest in another language and you want to use this as a way to learn how to speak another language or read another language, there's tools available to help you do so, and it'd be encouraged to jump in and try and figure something out. But so as you see, you can select a thing here and then you say index. We're not going to do that because I've already done a couple, pulled up a couple, and we'll jump right into there. And you'll see what happens when you do that, more or less.
I had a question real quick back on the ranking. So is that something that the imagers do, or someone in the uploading phase looks at the
Yeah,
document and says,
yeah,
this one looks like it's going to go advanced? That's some pretty hard to read stuff.
yeah. In fact, if
Scored
we look
by,
at kind of an advanced here, let's see the Yorkshire marriage bonds and allegations, 1613. This might be an interesting one to look at. Um, yeah, see, there's what you'll do here is you'll mine it for whatever names you can find,
wow,
and you
good.
see there's different images. But we'll get back to this kind of thing. So something to note, and I'll do this right now because I'm probably not going to dig into this record here. I can go back here and it takes me back to the dashboard. Any work you do in indexing is automatically saved. So if you are able to do one name on a list of, you see all these images, if I'm only have time to do one and I don't get around to finishing it, that work that you did is still saved. So the next person that picks this up will open it up and that one will be done, and then they'll just move on to the next one. So if you can't finish a batch, don't fear not. I mean, it will be finished. Someone else will pick up where you left off, and your work is not lost. It's never lost. But if I'm looking at something like this and I think, I picked off a little bit more than I can chew, then I can actually go to here and I can say return batch. And then it goes back into the batch selection. and someone else can select it and go right into it. I can also do that from this menu here. I could say manage, and I actually looked at this one real quick, but I'll probably start doing some of these other ones. So I can return this selected batch right there, and then it's gone. It goes back into the available pool. One thing to note, again, there's no shame. It is an automated process, but once you submit that batch, you're not recorded as failing that batch. You don't have to meet with your bishop and repent or anything like that. There is an automatically scheduled recommend interview where you have to renegotiate your term. No, I'm kidding. That doesn't happen. That's false. So if you get into something and you feel like you're in over your head, return it. There's no harm done, nothing to lose there. So feel free to peruse and explore to your heart's content. So let's jump into one right here. Let's see, I think I've got this one open. So as you open a batch, let's go here. I think the first time you open a batch, it's going to give you a little bit of information here. And it's important to read the steps and the instructions as they go along. It will help you. One of the reasons why you want to favorite a project is every project will have some pretty distinct instructions on them. And once you become familiar with a project, it becomes a lot more efficient to just go into the next batch of that project because you know what they're looking for. So we're going to push OK here, and because I'm familiar with this particular project, we can kind of go into it. This one I started, and we're going to go back into it just a minute. I want to show you a new batch. Let me try and dig out, and it might be this one. So if I go in here, nope, it's not this one. All right, I'm going to show you a new batch, this one. So if I go into a new batch, it's going to tell me the information, and then you'll see over in this left-hand side, it'll say, should this image be indexed? This is the first prompt that you get as you open up a brand new batch. Down here, you see the images, okay? There are 4 images in this particular batch. And then in each image, you'll see this one has 2 pages. Depending on the project, this second page can sometimes be irrelevant to indexing, but you want to not dismiss it outright. When you get into a project, the first thing that you'll do is you'll answer this question: should this image be indexed? If there is any information at all that can be used to search for this particular record, then the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no as in duplicate image, or no as in no extractable data. But in the 800 plus that I have done, they have all been yes. So it does happen, but it is quite rare that you'll say no. So here I see there's a personal name there, so I say yes, it does need to be indexed. This one, there's a personal name there. This one, there's another personal name, another personal name. Okay, so now we've marked it all as needing to be indexed, and we're ready to go. Now that I've shown you that, I'm going to kind of go back into this batch that I started here. I think it was this one. When you first open a batch, there will be instructions for this project pop up in the right-hand side here. You read through those, and it gives you kind of details on certain aspects of the project. You can also open them up by clicking on this button here, and it looks like that. Move the image box here. Or you can click down here. It'll always be at the bottom of your box over here. This one's asking me, did I not do this one? This one is yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah. All right, so you see this project instructions, and it's going to tell you some important stuff. It's also going to have an example, and if I click on death records or how to index a death record, it's actually going to show me. You can see this, right? With the red box.
You're going good.
So it's going to show me, okay, well, when it's asking for a certificate number, for this particular kind of look, it's going to be blank. I can also go back to here, and I can say, okay, well, what about a death certificate? And it'll show me a death certificate. And so then it'll say certificate number, and this one is right here. The deceased prefix is blank, and so you put Control D. This is a shortcut that we'll get to in just a moment as well. So it kind of breaks down the individual records so that you can kind of see how each one of them are to look and what you can expect. So if we go back into here, I'm dancing all around this page, but we're gonna go back to this one. Okay, so this one, oh, there it is. There's 3 records here. You can see this one, I've already recorded the information for this one and this one. So we're gonna do this one together, this last one. So if I look at this here, and the reason why I saved this one is because there's a little bit more of a difficulty. Sometimes you'll get typed out records, which are awesome, and sometimes you'll get handwritten ones, which can be fun. Urim and Thummim is not provided.
You want to do Urim and Thummim? That's
so if we look at this here, we could see the name of the deceased. We'll close this here for a minute. So you've also got, remember the 3 levels of records. You've got the project, you've got the batch, and you've got the name, right? And the individual entry. You've also got on each one of those, and a little bit more so, you've got information regarding how to index. So you'll have universal indexing information. You'll have project-based information, indexing information, and then you'll have entry level information, and that's what this question mark here is. So as I start to enter information in there, and if I have a question, I can go here for information on how to enter what's going on here. So we're going to start here with the certificate number, right? And the certificate number, based off of that demonstration or that example that we saw, is going to be right there. So it's going to be 3446. Push return. The deceased prefix. So I don't see a deceased prefix anywhere around here. It's usually going to be around the first name, possibly, or just around the name in general, or there sometimes is a separate box for it, but I don't see that. So I'm going to push Control B. If you look here, there's an asterisk. If there's an asterisk on a field, an entry field, it means something has to be written there. If it's blank, there's that shorthand for the blank, and it gives the computer algorithms and the Boolean searches or whatever it's called, it gives it the information it needs to know what's going on there. And this one doesn't actually have any that are not essential. But if it's not essential, there won't be a asterisk, and you can just skip that entry if there's nothing in the record. So if we're looking at deceased given name, what do we see here? Deceased given name is the first name, right? So here we see, what do we see here?
If I had to guess, I'd say Louise. Could be Lorraine, but I'm thinking Louise.
Okay, I would guess that it would be Louise as well. Something worth noting is, and I'll show you kind of where you find this information too. But let's say you're looking at that and you're saying, well, I think it's Louise, but I'm not absolutely sure on that second letter. If it's one letter, I can actually put a question mark and write the rest of it that I'm quite certain about. What that does is that tells the computer that that there's one wild card in the middle of that name. Let's say, however, that there's multiple letters together. Let's say the O and the U, maybe it's an A and a V, maybe it's a U and a R. You know, you can kind of see how there can be some confusion. I can put an asterisk right there, and that acts as a multiple character wildcard for any search. So if I'm Louise Williams's descendants and I'm looking for her information and I type in Louise Williams, this card will still come up as a viable search result because of the wild card. that's kind of what that function does. If it's spelled differently, like you mentioned earlier, Aaron, if there's a spelling that's different, it will still come up as a viable search result, but it'll be ranked lower in the search list because of that. This allows it to be ranked up with the whatever search parameters I'm looking for, as long as that wildcard is in the relevant position, if that makes sense.
Yep, it has to do with strength of
Um,
match.
Strength of match, that's right. So we will say Luis. The other thing to note is this will be reviewed by a reviewer who will go through and verify, yep, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct, and make changes based off of their understanding, and before it gets becomes available for anyone to search. The other question I get a lot is, what if you make a mistake? The answer to that is, with 1 million records being added per day, I think we can handle a couple mistakes here and there. We do the best we can, and again, those searches will still return other information, but we just do the best we can.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and throw my little caveat in here. I'm going to pull a Nephi on this one. This is important work, and it
Yes.
warrants a prayer before you begin for guidance.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I think if you want to know things that you don't know, the best way to get there is with the guidance of the Spirit, and starting with a prayer is probably a wise course of action. So I would plug,
What?
go with the Nephi.
Absolutely. I would endorse that as well. I second that as well. One thing I don't want, however, is I don't want the anxiety of making a mistake keep us from doing this work. So there's a balance, right? And there's a balance that you're going to find as you dig in and as you start going through the process. And that balance is, we learned that perfection is not performance without mistakes, right? So mistakes are not necessarily the issue. The not doing this work is the issue. So let's dig in. Let's go prayerfully and do the best we can, because as we do the best we can prayerfully, the Spirit will help us and consecrate our performance. Right? That's what we know.
So yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So with this, we forgot something. Deceased given names includes the middle name. So it's Luis, and then that second name, which I'm reading as Gabriel. If someone wants to chime in.
That would have been my guess as well. I saw Gabriel there too.
Yeah, and there might be Gabriel. Yeah, I think we can comfortably go with that. Deceased surname is a Williams, and then sex is right.
Under the name, it's number box 3.
Right. Yep. Right there. So with gender, you see there's a drop down, and all it's wanting you to do is put the first letter, just to keep it simple. Age we've got here is right there, 77 years old. Race is white, and I believe if we start typing it in, it'll show up. Okay, so birth year is interesting. In many cases, again, you don't want to interpret, but what you look at here, what you see here is a very specific instruction that if only a 2-digit number, so here's the birth date, right? That's the birth year. If only a 2-digit number was recorded, you can sometimes determine the first 2 digits of the 4-digit year from other information, such as the project dates, but we've got a problem here. It's 1835 to 1954. There could be 2 different 49s in there, right? Such as a project date or other contextual information on the image. The date was often written, okay, if you cannot determine the full 4-digit year, press Control-B to mark this field blank. So this is a certain instance where it's not asking you to put in what you see. It's asking you to do a little bit of interpretation, and if you can't figure out the 4 digits, then leave it blank. But in this particular case, as I've learned, you look down here and you get a nice little stamp, nice and clearly read. right? So this is 1949. And so we can put
Also
that
on
in there.
the coroner or whoever signed the death certificate there, you have another 1949 on the signature line in the middle of your form there.
In the middle? Oh, yeah, yeah, right there. Yep. So there's a couple of contextual things. And a lot of times, the project will actually discourage you from making contextual interpretations. That's why it's important to know the specific instructions on each project. In some cases, it'll tell you that if you know, like you see here, the state or foreign country of birth is LA, right? If you know your state abbreviations, you know what that means. But if I look down here at birthplace, it's going to tell me, do not correct misspellings or expand abbreviations. Okay, so this particular project doesn't want me to. In other projects, it will ask you to expand the abbreviation if you know what it is. You don't always have to, but it says if you know what it's for, then you can expand it. So here it's going to be birthplace, and we can see birthplaces right here. It's New Orleans, so 9A, 9B is the birthplace. And what this
Catch you real quick
particular,
on your birth year, you've put down the signing year of the document.
oh, you're right.
Some math on that.
You're right. That's the death date. So the birth date is actually unknown.
It doesn't say it on there. You'd have to derive it from subtracting 77 from 1949.
But you're not going to do that. So that's an interpretation it doesn't want you to do. So this we would just push blank because it's not listed.
It's not explicitly stated.
Exactly. So here we go. That's very good. Thank you for that correction, by the way. I got a little ahead of myself. The death year is right there, which will do exactly what we did for the birth year, but this time will be correct. Birthplace, that's right. New Orleans, Louisiana. So if we look here again, it'll say, type the birthplace as it was written. Do not correct misspellings. Do not include hospital. Do not include terms such as city, county. If multiple levels of locality were recorded, type all levels in order from smallest to largest, separated by a comma and a space. In this case, commas are necessary to distinguish the
You do have a
levels
birth
of
date.
locality.
It's in number 7, by the way.
We're getting all, oh, look at that. Wow, it's spelled out like that. And that's 1871, right?
1870, yeah.
Okay.
Pay attention, right?
Yes. Usually I'm a little more focused when I'm not presenting. There's a little disclaimer there.
Sure.
Little apologetic.
I really do appreciate this. This is a great tutorial so far. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Happy to help. So here I would put it just like it says, right? New Orleans, comma, space, LA. It asked me not to expand an abbreviation, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Death month is right up here. That's 6. Oh, it's going to ask me the first 3. So it wants you to put in the first 3 letters of the month. Okay. Day is the 15th. Death year is 1949, right? We determined that already. Father's given name. We have, it looks like it's Christian Gabriel, right? So the given name is Christian. The surname is Gabriel. And then the mother's prefix. So what I'm looking at, what I see here is we have birthplace of the father, we don't know. Maiden name of the mother is here. And I don't see a prefix. So I'm going to mark that blank. And here we're going to, I believe we're looking at a Caroline. Any ideas here? We're going to crowdsource this one here. Caroline.
RLAN, but I can't figure out that first letter. URLAN? Erlin?
Well, you can kind of see she was born in Germany, so it's going to be likely a German name. Weilen? Is that a W? Look, you can also, this is where sort of some investigative work happens. You look at other letters Is that an H? It wouldn't be an H. It's a capital. It's not an L, O, not a G or a C. What do you think? E, maybe? Eslin? Erlin?
Give it a question mark.
I think what we can do here is put a asterisk and then say LAN, because it's one, possibly two letters right there, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to do that. We'll push enter. Spouse's prefix. So up here, we're going to see, let's see, where is, oh, married. Married, widowed. Name of husband or wife, George William.
Williams.
Williams, you're right, George Williams. So if I'm looking at, there's no prefix there, so I'm going to render it blank. Spouse's given name is George, and spouse's surname is Williams. Okay, there's actually a question I have here. So these other, so you see here how we have no name listed as the husband and no name listed as the husband or wife here. And here you have unknown, unknown, unknown. So that's where you render it blank. The only other kind of quick key that you have is unreadable, and that's a control U, I believe. And we'll look at, I'll show you where you find that information too. But one thing I have a question about, because I actually haven't encountered one with a name of a husband or wife, I think that means they want a second entry, because it's another name of relevance. See, the default number of entries per image is set at 4. So I'll have to do some digging on that to see. Index all records with the name of the deceased person. Okay, nope. So we're done. We got this one, the deceased person.
The algorithm ought to be smart enough to create create a record for each individual listed here without you creating your own indexing record of it.
Yeah, and it depends on what the image looks like, because sometimes they'll put if they're batching or they take photos of the same state like Louisiana and it's in the same period, sometimes that death certificate changes format over time, and sometimes it's even a multiple entry format in one case or another. So what we'll do here is we're at the end, and then we can click down here at submit batch, and it says no issues are found, which is great. So we submit batch and we get the confetti party. Hooray.
Confetti. Wow. Yeah. I was joking about the confetti, but that's hilarious.
No, you get it. Yep. And then from here, I can say, I can go to a similar batch and I can stay in this, or I can go to my next batch, which is alien arrivals in Maine. And I can go back to web indexing from here or find batches. So, or I can close it. Okay, so that's how you run a basic batch. Let me show you something in this one real quick, because I encountered that with that last batch, and I'd corrected it before we got to it. What you see here is entry 1 of 4. The instructions say that by default, they have 4 entries per page. And as you can kind of see, we looked at it before the last one, and there are each one of these represents one individual's death certificate. So what I could do is I go back here, and once I get all this entered in for the first one, it'll say, it'll ask me to go to the next entry, or I'll push return at the end of it and it'll go to the next entry. When I get to the next entry, I can actually click on this trash can here and then delete all blank entries, and it'll eliminate all those extra entries that I don't have names to fill for. Or I can just delete the current one, right? But note that it will delete all the ones that don't have any information in. So you'll want to kind of go through each one and enter that first entry before going back and deleting all the ones that don't have an entry.
Okay.
Okay, makes sense?
So to clarify, does that entry 1 of 4, is that something that's auto-generated by the system when it's created?
That's the system, yes. And
Okay.
that's this particular project. They just have that set up, and there's probably a reason. There's probably other death certificate batches that have up to 4 entries on a page or on an image. I guess they call this an image because in each image can be 1 or 2 pages, sometimes multiple pages.
I see.
All right.
I'm wondering if, you know, probably not going to be the case, but if you happen to run into 2 spouses or something listed or something, you know, effective.
It's possible. Yeah. Maybe
Three
dying
deceased
together or
spouse
something.
and,
Yeah.
that'd be well,
These
a bridge to
tool.
cross if you ever haven't come across it.
That's right, and there are. I will now show where you can get a lot of the help and information. So if you ever do come across something that you're just like, oh, I don't understand why that's that way, you can find ways of understanding and figuring it out. What you see up here is a toolbar. We've used this one before. This one you can use to submit the batch at the end of the whole thing. And you can start opening different dialog boxes and other things going on here. I wouldn't worry so much about some of these other ones right away. Once you get into get indexing a little bit further along, some of these will be useful for shorthand and shortcuts and making your workflow a little bit more efficient. But if you ever forget what it means to say or how you say blank, you can say blank there, or you can say unreadable there. But we'll delete those so that it doesn't confuse me later on, because lots of things confuse me. Over here on this side, you get this one here, which is actually a handwriting example. So you can pull up a quick guide to show you, okay, these are some standard handwriting examples of how K was written, for instance, or how Q, or how R, S, and et cetera, right? And those can be quite handy. They're contextual or semi-contextual. They're available as an overlay on your project. And here are some international characters, so you can input international characters in the field there. You see as I click on that, it enters it there. And this is the project instructions, something that you need to know. There's also stuff up here that's useful. If you've got a list, you can use this to keep track of lines of information. That becomes useful in some cases, especially death indexes or birth indexes. And then there's other things that you can kind of play around with. Again, I wouldn't necessarily worry about some of those things right away. Those become useful for streamlining your process down the way a little bit.
Yep.
There's other things you can do. You can actually share a batch. So if you're having some difficulty and you don't want to just simply dismiss it or pass it off, maybe you want to kind of co-investigate one of those more difficult batches and have fun with it. I can open up a share batch, and then I can link it to someone else on indexing, and we can look at it together. And in some
that's kind
cases,
of what I see the role of the family history consultants in the word playing to a degree is helping out with those questions and helping people. So anybody who, I'm gonna be optimistic and say those of you who listen to this later, since we didn't get the joins that we'd hoped for today, those of you who take the time to watch this and listen to it later, that's what myself, and before I volunteer you, Pat, that's what family history consultants are in the ward for,
right?
With guiding along these questions.
Absolutely.
Mark's role is a stake high counselor. He's here to help me help you, but Pat and I, that is what we're here for, is to help the ward members work their way through this and learn how to do it effectively.
Yeah. So in terms of that, that's very good. Very good point. Myself, as high counselor to coordinate the family history and indexing effort, I work with Sister Carolyn Carter, who is the stake indexing specialist, and together she and I help lend stake level assistance to ward, temple, and family history consultants over indexing. And Sister Tuckett is the stake family history coordinator or specialist. So that's a good point. As as we deploy our ward family history specialists, there are resources available and guides available, and this makes it really useful, especially in our current situation, to be able to help people and maintain that social distancing. So, which is it's a term I just
It's
absolutely love.
going to be the word of the year. I guarantee
Some I think you're right. It's something I've been trying to employ for some time now. Now it's become
Oh, it's
socially
mandatory.
acceptable and mandatory. Yeah. You see here though that in this particular field, there's a couple typed. That those become a bit of an easy indexing effort because it's basically written for you. It's done for you. So let me show you a couple other helps that are available. These are helps that are available inside the indexing window, this this web app. But if we step out here and we can go, if we're in our web indexing here, we can look at our help resources, but you can also drop it down and see it here. And there's a few things that I like to point out. Here's your get started, but I like the basic indexing guidelines here. And some reason I just activated Siri over here. So your basic indexing guidelines will give you a lot of the general indexing wide instructions. So your general guidelines for how you deal with things. What do you do with a ditto mark? Here's your question mark and your asterisks. Your control U, your overlays. What do you do when you encounter overlays or specific guidelines? And different names and dynamics that you encounter. Those are helpful. I often will have this window open in another tab, so I can quickly go back and forth. However, whoops, I don't know where that. Oh yeah, that's where we are. However, I'm going to go back into the indexing tool real quick, and open this just for a moment because I want to show you. You can get that if you go to project instructions here with this tab and you scroll down to additional information. All that stuff is right here. So that page that I just showed you is also available right here for your perusing. So if I look back at this page here, you can go through a guided tour. The guided tour, if you're worried about jumping into indexing, the guided tour walks you through an example indexing project all the way through. So and step by step with instructions along the way. I'm sure that record that it uses as an example has been indexed about 1 million times. So no worries about making an error on that one. This one is also quite helpful. And I told you that if you wanted to dive into another language, there are help and assistance available for many of them. You'll see that this goes beyond that, that in-app handwriting guide, and it'll show you different things. Here we've got an Old English guide. We also, so we can look at Old English and it can walk us through, okay, well here's an example of an interpretation of that. And you can see it's got that hover over built into it that just kind of helps you see it really well. For a P, for a Q, for an R. So you can kind of see how it helps you walk through some of that Old English stuff. And then your secretary hand, your alphabet. This is not necessarily Old English, but it kind of gets there. And you can kind of see those. There's also lessons on how to read handwritten letters, dates, documents. There's video tutorials from BYU linguists and historians, and those are available in multiple languages too. So all of these languages have equal or similar guides. So there's a lesson on how to read German handwritten letters, for instance. So it's quite robust. And so if you do have an interest in, say, hey, I have Dutch ancestry and I'd really like to become familiar with it. Well, fear not. Let's dive in. There's ways of
Right. Look at
figuring
that
it out.
G. Woo.
The Z.
G.
Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. That's fun, isn't it? Or the little G. Look at the little G. Nice. So there you go. I'm not sure. That's where we're at now. I'm not sure what else
Well, I think
to.
that this is great. I don't want to make this too long because it'll dissuade viewership.
Yeah,
The longer the video, obviously, people are going to get other things on their mind. We have a 10-minute world really that we live in, so people can hold it in
yeah. And
super
10 minutes
long,
if you're lucky.
right? And this, I'm sorry, Mark, but you didn't have quite enough confetti to keep everybody in for a full hour plus. So
Oh, well, let's go through another one.
this is
No.
great. Yeah, right. No, this is great. I think I want to try and do, even if it's just a short little touch bases group meeting every Sunday. I would love to do something like this, just as a, hey, we're not having Sunday school, so let's have a little virtual connecting class and bring your questions. If any questions, bring them and we'll talk about them and crowdsource some of these answers. It'd be a fun way to, even like I said, with the little competitions there. Hopefully we can get some enthusiasm for this with people at home and having, only so many options on Netflix and Disney Plus at this point. Let's do something useful. So
Yeah, and as you can see here, like these groups down here, this was from a Elk Ridge 10th Ward before we split, an Elders Quorum invitational. And as you can kind of see, I can look in the Knights of Eel, and I see who's listed as members of Knights of Eel down here. And then I can see the performance, how we're performing over the last couple months, right? And so you can also I can set a goal here for the Knights of Eel. We've not quite met our goal. Oh, this is for the year. Yeah, so we're on track to actually meeting our goal. And so yeah, have fun with it. Dig in. There's plenty of tools available to enjoy. So yeah, happy to help. And hopefully Aaron and you and your comrades, as it were, will be able to
as far as I
go
know,
forth and
it's
share.
Pat right now. I think it's just me
It's
and
just the two of you?
they haven't
Okay.
managed to call any other family history workers in the ward yet. But
Okay.
there will be callings extended, and this will continue to grow.
Okay. Well, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate the time to share that with you.
Yeah. Thank you
And
so much
Pat,
for the
thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign it off now, unless, Pat, if you had any last minute additions or thoughts you wanted to share, but I appreciate you being here. And everyone have a great Sunday and stay healthy out there.
Okay. Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Take care.